cheap guitars and wood drying, setting the record straight. Hey everybody, Jayce Allan here. Welcome back to the channel. So I know. I said I wasn't going to do any more videos on guitar wood moisture, but I got an email from the people that make the Tostar, I love that name, Tostar guitars, because they emailed me and they wanted to send me another guitar, which ironically the guitar they're sending me is a composite body, so it doesn't have any wood in it. So I asked my contact over there if they could find out how they, how they dry their wood. And so I think you're going to find the answer pretty interesting. So if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, go into the description. There'll be some links in there about the videos and all this hoopla over wood moisture content in guitars. Because there's now this growing, this growing group of people that believe that cheap guitars, they already believed that cheap guitars aren't any good, but now they believe that cheap guitars aren't good because the wood isn't dry. And so there's been some videos and some sort of tests done that show that the wood in these cheap guitars, like a Harley Benton, are just too wet. And some of it stems from some videos that Phil McKnight did and that people are taking out of context. Because Phil, he's very thorough. He's very down to earth. He's very no nonsense. He's not going to, conflate something and blow it out of proportion. He's very straight shooter. So he goes to these factories in Asia, Indonesia, I think, so he goes to the Quart factory. And that's where these PRS SEs are made. And so he did, this is a clip from his podcast, because he does these short clips from his podcast. And in this one, they're talking about how the wood is dried for the PRS SEs as opposed to, budget guitars. And so I think people latch onto that stuff and then they start to exaggerate it, or they take it out of context. Because if you watch this one here, he's talking about fret sprout on necks.
Guitars, because the reason why you see fret sprout more predominant in the lower price guitars is because of the time in drying wood time. So if you take a Paul Reed Smith guitar, a core, this is something cool to know about PRS guitars. A Paul Reed Smith USA built instrument, okay? And a Paul Reed Smith Cortec built Indonesian instrument. They actually have the same standard for the wood. So they're trying to get the moisture content in the neck to right at or below 5%. So that's where they want to be. So here you go. This is Jack Higginbotham, the CEO now of Paul Reed Smith Guitars, explaining guitar necks and drying guitar necks in Indonesia.
So we have these moisture meters, but this is a probe meter. There's also meters that you can just lay on the surface and it'll read it, but I like digging into the wood. And you can see it says low.
Right.
This thing won't read below 5%.
Oh, okay.
So when it says low, that means this thing is working great, because this is 4.54%. There's no water in this wood. We have evacuated all the water out of this wood.
Here's what's interesting about that, and a little fun. This will be fun information. The question is, they're trying to get a moisture content in the neck of a guitar, whether it's USA made or Indonesian made. They're trying to get it to at or below 5%, right? That's basically the gist of that. Here's what's interesting. How long does that take? 18 hours. So the point is, at a guitar at $99, are they drying the wood down to 5% and sitting it in the kiln for 18 hours? No, there's no way. So that's the limit. So you're like, okay, well, 18 hours, let's call that a day, right? Because they're going to run that all day, okay? Maybe they can run it, in a concurrent time frame. But the point is, then if you go, okay, well, that's 500 guitars a day. So PRS is making 500 SEs a day out of that factory. That's a lot of guitars. You take a $99 guitar, they're making way, way, way more than that. That's the whole point of making a guitar like that. There's no money in the guitar if they don't make a lot of them. They got to make a lot of them. Remember, now they're making $20 per guitar, $15 per guitar. They need a lot. So physically, how do you dry the wood that way? Now they have to use a different type of drying process. And it's got to be faster. Warlock says, Dylan talks tones, Harley Benton had 35% humidity or moisture. I'd say that would almost be impossible. I would say almost impossible. I would say if we're talking about a neck, just the way it works wouldn't be 35%. What ideally? Let me just tell you where the lines are. So on a guitar that's made inexpensively, the threshold for a neck, anything above 7% is usually higher than they want it to be. On a guitar body, anything above 10% is above where they want it to be. But can it go that way? Yeah, they can fluctuate all the time. It's tough because again, they're making so many.
Okay, so notice that first of all, the guy checking the moisture sticks that meter in, and it's parallel to the grain. Where I said, somebody had told me that that the pins on the moisture meter have to be running against, perpendicular to the grain. But he just stuck it right in the side of that thing, parallel to the grain. Okay, so we know that that's, And then notice, the focus of this conversation about wood moisture is primarily about necks. That the PRS SE factory wants the necks of their guitar down below 5%. Which makes sense because that's the part of the guitar that holds the string tension. So you definitely want your necks to be very stable. And then he goes on to talk about guitars in the $100 price range, because the companies are only making $15 to $20 a piece on those. So you got to understand that prices and guitar. Cheap guitars to expensive guitars and prices and quality and everything is all kind of on this weird sliding scale. You can have super, super cheap guitars that are under $100 and they just slap them together and get them out and they sell, a bazillion of them. And then you have sort of the budget range that I like to call is like maybe $200, $250 to $500, $600. And those, I would assume that the companies making them are probably making a pretty decent amount of money on them. And they are targeting the hobby guitar player, somebody that maybe already plays guitar, that wants a decent guitar that doesn't cost a ton of money. And so they're going to pay a little bit more attention to quality. Yes, they're going to cut costs in the sense that they're going to use cheaper woods. Obviously, the labor is already cheap, so they're going to use cheaper woods. Like Phil said, they're maybe not going to dry them to such a point. He's saying 10% is maybe the ceiling for a budget guitar, whereas these SEs, they seem to want to get theirs down below 5%, 6%. But he was talking about necks there too. He didn't really specify what the body, the body wood has to be down to on an SE. So it's a very fluid moving target. I mean, when we're talking about moisture content in guitars. And then you'll notice that he, because there's a lot of misinformation coming at us in the comments section, because that's where the comment section is where all these rumors and all this stuff gets started. Because because of all this talk about wood moisture, that's going to be the thing that everybody's talking about for the next 6 months. I bet a year from now we'll have comments where somebody says, "Oh, cheap guitars aren't any good because they don't dry them." So they'll take what the influencers say out of context. And if you notice the part where somebody is, Phil's reading comments, because this is a podcast, a live stream, and somebody mentions Dylan Talks Tones experiment, and he says 35%, that Dylan found 35% moisture in the Harley Benton, which is not true. It was 18.5%. So that's how these rumors get started, because somebody's going to, Phil corrected the guy, basically said, no, it's impossible that it can be 35%. But that's how these things get going. Somebody's going to hear, oh, 35%. These guitars have 35% moisture in them. Or they'll watch, Dylan's video and go, oh, well, and the Harley Bentons have 18% moisture in them. So then that's how these sort of urban legends about guitars sort of get perpetuated. And then it becomes a talking point. It becomes, budget guitars, cheap guitars aren't any good because they're wet. They won't last because they're wet. They'll deteriorate because they're wet. I don't know. That's the big thing is, people, I had somebody in the comments of one of my videos, I think it was yesterday or the day before, basically say that these budget guitars are designed to last for a year. I think he said a year or two. And I thought, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Because first of all, if you think of Thomann, they're a huge music supply company. They're the biggest in Europe. They're huge, all over the world. They're one of the biggest in the world as far as, probably as far as sales volume goes and everything. You really think they're going to be selling guitars that only last a year? Maybe a $50 or $60 guitar. And those things are going to last longer than a year. I mean, this Harley Benton back here is a good guitar. It's going to last, it'll last a lifetime if you take care of it. But these guys seem to think that these cheap guitars are just going to disintegrate. They're just going to turn to a pile of dust. There's like a ticking clock. And as soon as that guitar hits 365 days, it's going to you're going to open the case and it's going to be a pile of dust. I don't know. I don't know where these guys get this stuff from. But that's how these myths and these things get perpetuated. So anyway, I asked, because Tostar, I love that name, they reached out and asked if I wanted to review another guitar. So, of course, I said yes. Because I love guitars, and I want to review them. So they want to send me a guitar. Ironically, the guitar that they're sending me has a composite body in it. And so I asked them when they reached out to me to see if I wanted to review this guitar. I said, hey, there's this big controversy over wood moisture for budget guitars. What's your process for drying wood for the guitars? And so she's just a representative, so she had to get back to me. And so this is the email that she sent. She said, I'd also like to answer your question about our wood drying and wood treatment process, which you were curious about. When the raw wood arrives at our factory, its moisture content is usually between 20 to 30%. That makes sense. That tracks. We first use professional vacuum dehumidifying equipment to reduce the wood moisture to a stable 8 to 9%. After that, we place the wood in a professional drying and conditioning room where the temperature is kept at least 26 degrees Celsius, which I'm a Yank, so I have no idea what Celsius is. So let's see, 26 Celsius to Fahrenheit. That would be 78.8 degrees. That's a nice, comfortable spa day for your guitar wood. And the humidity is... She says, okay, let me backtrack. After that, we place the wood in a professional drying and conditioning room where the temperature is kept at 26 degrees Celsius and the humidity is maintained at 40% for stable natural conditioning. Once the wood treatment is fully completed, we apply professional surface paint sealing to stabilize the wood further to prevent deformation or cracking. This is the complete standardized process from our factory team to ensure you have our own independent guitar factory with mature and professional production experience. We provide OEM manufacturing services for many well-known music brands, and our wood processing quality and overall craftsmanship are very reliable. And that's the Tostar. This is $144 right now on Amazon. And I checked the wood moisture on this guitar with the pinless meter because I'm not going to stick pins in this thing. I'm actually giving this guitar to the guys at Fret Not Guitar that does the giveaways. We're going to do a little collaboration, and they're going to give that guitar away. But anyway, I tested the moisture on that. It's like between 9 and 10%, which is a little high, but that's, like I said, my room is at 55% humidity. It's damp down here. I should be running the dehumidifier. I usually do, but it makes a lot of noise. So when I'm filming, it makes noise. So that's why it's damp down here. So your guitars are going to fluctuate. This winter, when the furnaces are running, all my guitars dry out. And so, yeah. So anyway, I just thought you guys would find that interesting. I wanted to do this as a quick video. None of my videos turn out quick. So anyway, there you go. That's a budget guitar brand that actually dries their wood. So who knows what company is making these, but whatever. I don't know. I was thinking about, because they said they do OEM manufacturing, so maybe a signature Jayce Allan guitar is in the future. So who knows? Anyway, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for following sort of this saga. I find it very interesting. I think it forces us to confront some of these myths and to confront the bias against cheap guitars, because there's definitely a bias out there. There's definitely, I don't know. Some people are just really offended by cheap guitars, but whatever. I think they're pretty great, and sort of based my channel on it, and you guys seem to like the content, and we can review guitars. We can review a lot more cheap guitars every year than we can expensive guitars, because the budget allows it. So anyway, I appreciate your continued support, and yeah, so we'll get some more guitar reviews to you soon. I'm waiting on that Chill Cat. Hopefully that'll show up today. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. This is Jayce Allan for Jayce Allan Guitar, and we'll leave the amp on for you.